Hi, everybody. Welcome to 1200XL. I'm John.
I'm Aaron.
And today, Aaron, we're going to be talking about Miner 2049er.
Okay.
Aaron, you ever done any mining in your life?
I've been in coal mines.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. When I was young, my grandpa, who was mining at the time, took me into a working coal mine in Cabin Creek.
Okay.
And we visited up there. You don't want to work there. And then, of course, like most of the kids around here, I've been to the Beckley, West Virginia exhibition coal mine. I'm sure you've been down there too.
So you come from a mining family.
You got that right. On my mom's side of the family, my grandpa, most of my uncles are all miners. Yeah, absolutely.
You never had any great desire, though, to follow them down into the pits.
Oh, God. Listen, do you know what black lung is, Boat?
I do.
Yeah. That right there was enough for me because all of them had that. The black lung, that's for real. In case you don't know what that is, it's when you've mined a long time, that all that cold stuff gets in your lungs and it jacks you up. And I don't think there's a cure for it. You sort of live with it.
Yeah,
you
live with it till you die.
Yeah, it's not. Mining is man, that's a tough one, isn't it? It's amazing that my granddad lived as long as he did, considering the coal mines and the paratrooper stuff and the prisoner of war stuff. He was a tough hombre.
Yeah. Now, what do you consider, Miner 2049er, mining in the future? It seems like the technology is not really advanced into the future. You're still using the old pickaxe.
Well, it's a little bit different,
you still got
though.
Your canteen.
Here's the difference, right? So, in coal mining, you're down there, you're literally harvesting coal from the deep depths of the earth, right? In Miner 2049er, you're like basically picking up like toxic waste and stuff, right? So, it's more of a cleanup mission. This is like, remember like the Superfund site, Nitro and stuff, where they're cleaning up all the disastrous, hideous chemical mess that they left behind?
Did you just call it the Superfund site?
Superfund.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I was gonna say.
In America, Superfund is when you've got a massive chemical screw up, and they've got this fund that they use to pay to clean this death hole up. That was one on there.
Yeah, we've had several of those.
Yeah. Chemical plants beat this state like they owned us, because they did, and then they walked away. Not very nice.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about Miner 2049er, Aaron. This thing comes to us from way back in the foggy, misty days of 1982.
They're not that foggy to me.
You still remember 1982?
I was 11.
Okay. I was 1. This comes to us from Big 5 Software. Now, Big 5 Software was basically the work of one man. One or two guys, but the main guy was Bill Hogue. Okay?
Yeah.
You know anything about Bill Hogue?
This game, I know. I've seen his name come up hundreds of times. I've played it. So yeah.
Bill Hogue started out in high school as an employee for Radio Shack.
No kidding.
Yeah, he worked in a Radio Shack, and he was constantly hounding the managers there to get more TRS-80 stuff.
I'm with him.
Because he was working, and there was just not this Radio Shack wasn't getting a lot of action. People were coming in, they were getting their free batteries,
and you're out. That's all we used to do at Radio Shack before you had the computer. That was it, or unless you were an electronics guy.
Right. So anyway, while he was sitting there, he would program TRS-80 games. Okay. And
this would have been like the Model 1.
This is like the Model 1,
yeah.
Model 3, yeah. He did games like Supernova, Galaxy Invasion, Robot Attack. Any of these ring a bell?
Not immediately, no.
A lot of these games have very sort of generic titles. This
Yeah.
was during a time in computer games when computer games were brand new and you could get away with that.
You could just name them whatever you want. You could say like Space Battle.
Right.
And that meant something to somebody.
Exactly. And he would sell these games, out of the back of magazines and stuff like that. One-man show. Towards the end of the TRS-80 run, though, he did finally convince Radio Shack to put some of these software titles on the shelves, and they were sold under these packs. So it would be like Space Pack or like Adventure Pack.
All right.
They'd all be bundled
Probably
together.
the old Ziploc bag treatment.
Right,
yeah.
Right, that old shtick. So anyway, he wanted to do something more. He was originally going to write Miner 2049er for the TRS-80 Model 1, but it was discontinued in mid-1982. So he was like, well, I want to stay with the family. So he bought a Coco. Didn't like the Coco. He thought it was underpowered and not a good system. And he really wanted to write this thing for the Atari. He thought the Atari was the best thing going at the time. And so this was, there were a couple of firsts in this. The first was that this was the first cartridge-based game for Big 5 Software. And what this meant was It's incredible to me that this sort of thing happened, even in the early days of computers. But what this guy did was he found a supplier that could make the shells. He found a company that could make the ROMs. He ordered everything in bulk, and then they had an assembly guy that would just sit there in the back of his storefront and just assemble all these carts.
That's funny. I owned the cart for the Atari.
Did you?
Yeah, and actually I don't have the box, but I got it with that mega deal a couple years ago, and I also got the instructions for it. And it never occurred to me because I think, as I recall, the cartridge has like a gold foil cover on it. It never occurred to me that a guy sat in the back in a storeroom somewhere.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, it is. That's wacky.
And this was an expensive game when it first came out. Most cart games were only 8K.
Yeah.
And this was a 16K game, so it's more hardware. And this thing sold, get this, Aaron, $49.95.
Ooh, in '82.
In '82,
that is expensive.
That's $132 in today's money.
Wow.
So but why did he do it? Why did he make it on cart? The reason is simple. You want to take a guess?
Piracy.
Exactly.
Yeah, he knew even then, I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, he decided to call this game Miner 2049er because of. Do you know what is the significance here? Miner 2049er.
Well, I know what Miner 49er is.
Right. So explain that to the audience.
Well, from the gold rush era, right? That was what 1849. That's when all the miners went out to the west.
Right.
And that's where the term Miner 49er comes from.
And there's a song, Clementine, right?
Yeah.
In a canyon, in a cavern, excavating for a mine, lived a miner 49er and his daughter Clementine.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that is where he got the name from. Nothing really, but he wanted to make it in the future. So there you go.
Hey, one thing, just to backtrack for a split second, this wasn't Big Five's first game. Were the games that were published in the bags, were those published under Big Five name?
Those were published under Big Five too.
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah, but this was the first Atari.
Okay, gotcha.
The first Atari release. This game, however, was not only just on the Atari. This thing was one of the first successful cross-platform licensing deals in history. Up until this point, there really wasn't a whole lot of official, above-board cross-platform licensing. You had stuff that was under the table, a lot of clones and things, but basically, this guy said, okay, you got a computer, you can make Bounty Bob Strikes Back, just give me a cut. And as a result, this thing was released on tons and tons of systems. We'll talk about that later on in the show, though. So, I want to tell you a little bit about the backstory of Miner 2049er. So this guy, your main player, is Bounty Bob. Okay, he's a member of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police on a mission to search through all of Nuclear Ned's abandoned uranium mines for the treacherous Yukon Johan. Bob must claim each section of the mine by running over it.
So he's a hoser, is what you're saying?
Yeah.
I never knew that. Did you know that?
I would have thought that maybe they discovered gold in Canada in 1849.
I'm not. Well, I mean, since he's looking for uranium, I guess it matters.
Yeah, Yukon Ho and all that. So, what is going on in this game, Aaron? You want to explain the sort of gameplay of Miner 2049?
A lot of people describe this as Pac-Man-esque. It's funny how often you hear that, but I never always got the exact connection. I guess because as Bounty Bob rolls across a platform, there are little lines in the platform, and as he goes across the platform or the floor, they become solid. And the goal of each level is to basically solidify all the little lines, basically to go everywhere on the level. You have to touch everywhere. You can't jump over areas because those don't count. You've got to touch them. And some areas have a ton of platforms, some don't. Some have elevators, some don't. But you have to touch them all, or all the ones that have lines on them. And then along the way, you will confront like mutants that if you touch, they will kill you. Now, there are pickups along the way that render the mutants touchable for a few seconds.
Killable.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know. Does he kill them or just grab them? Who knows? But whenever he goes over them, they just disappear.
Right.
So I never 100% knew what he was doing to them, but whenever he does, they're gone. That's it.
Now,
I know you have a time limit.
Yeah,
of course.
you've got a time limit, and there are lots of things in these stages that sort of help you along. There are transporters.
Yes.
That work sort of like elevators. You've got hydraulic scaffolds, jet speed floaters. So it's more than just your run of the mill sort of This game, I feel like, took the mechanics of a game like Jumpman
Yes.
and added another element to it.
Yeah. Jumpman also had a collection motif, but the differences are really, it's funny, when you play these games, they don't really remind me of each other too much, despite the fact that you run around and jump off platforms. I never really made the connection because this is more of there is sort of a Pac-Man-y thing in this because you have to touch everything.
You've got to touch
everything. As opposed
to
Jumpman where you could just sort of just go grab the little circles.
Right, right. And so this combines the collectible aspects, the the platforming aspects of a game like Jumpman, but it adds this whole different mechanic of having to basically traverse the whole level and cover it all. Is this the first game you can think of with that kind of mechanic where you're covering the whole floor? As you walk across something, it covers it up.
I'm not gonna sit here and say it was. It's the first one I can remember, yes, but I can't remember all. It's like you're right. It's a long time ago. But the one thing that this game does, and a Jumpman does it too, to be fair, they take a pretty basic concept and then they just expand on it. Your concept in this game, you have to touch all the floor. Okay, well, first level you touch all the floor. The second level, okay, here are some slicky slides. If you touch, you'll fall down if you touch these. Okay, then they add moving platforms. Then they add teleporters, and they just expand upon that. And it's the simplicity's there, right? And that's what makes it fun. You're not going to wonder what you're supposed to do. But on the flip side, it gently ups the ante on all these levels, and that's what makes it fun. But of course, in a game like this and a game like Jumpman, it's control is king.
Right.
And one thing that they did in these games is they had ultimate control. They did a great job with the way he jumps. You understand pretty quickly that sometimes you can't just jump the maximum every time. Certain platforms are set in certain ways to screw you over.
You find that out on the first level, yeah.
That's right. And so, but it's nothing that's too complicated, and it's all fair. It plays fair with you, and that's, to me, a game like this that's a sort of a simple game is fun because the gameplay goes beyond the simplicity of the game. Does that make any sense?
Oh yeah. Absolutely. The thing that attracts me to this game is that it reminds me so much of one of my favorite arcade games, and it's one that you hate.
Yeah.
City Connection.
You're right. I don't get it. Explain to me.
Well, in City Connection, you do the exact same thing that you do in Bounty Bob. You have a series of platforms that you have to drive over and cover to complete a level. It's exactly the same as Bounty Bob.
It's driving.
Except you're driving.
Yeah.
So I love that. But really, I think that Bounty Bob is a better game than City Connection. Okay. Bounty Bob is great because it's a score-based challenge. You are under the gun with a time limit, so you can't just press for points indefinitely. At some point you got to get the job
done. Really can't press for points at all, can you?
Well,
if
yeah,
you can, I don't know how.
Well, you sure can. You can get through each level without killing any of the enemies. Or you can take your time and you can kill all the enemies, but if you do that, then you're running the risk of running out of time.
Right, but you can't. It's not like, say, Donkey Kong, where there's going to be the enemies don't regenerate.
Oh no,
so, yeah,
no.
You're basically you can only go so far. There's a maximum point level you're going to get, and then so the timer really is what you're right. And adding a time element to this because it makes sense for the game too. The levels need a good time.
Oh yeah, and you got to think about, well, maybe you can work it into the theme. You're in a radioactive zone.
Right.
You can't spend too long in each place.
Right.
And so this is an example of just a totally 1982. We're still really early on here, and this is a very high quality home video game experience that if you spruced up the graphics some would be not out of place at all in an arcade in 1982.
Yeah, well, this here to me embodies a computer game though, in a lot of that era, but because there's more to it. I don't think this would actually work as an arcade game that well, in my opinion. You could do it. I don't know, maybe it's just because I've played it on the computers for so long, but you really have to sit back and think. This isn't just like run as fast as you can. This is not Donkey Kong.
No.
You have to be a little bit more cerebral when you do this.
I agree.
Not to say you can be an idiot and play Donkey Kong. It's a different sort of thinking, but you have to really plan your moves because when you're trying to get over, there are some areas where you have to deal with a mutant and you have to get to that mutant that means you have to get a pickup to kill the mutant, and you have to time everything to get over to where he's at. Also, dealing with the slides, you have to do things in a certain order, or you're running out of time.
I think for me, my biggest complaint about the game is the slides, because the area around the slides that you have to cover by walking over it, there's not a sharp delineation of when you're going to trigger the slide and when you're not.
Well, I think that's part of the game, though. And once you play this thing for a while, you know where you can and can't go. That doesn't mean you won't screw up, which is, again, that's part of it. But the slides, I mean, they are irritating, but they're not. That's what they're there for.
I really like the transporters in this game.
Yeah.
They work differently than they do in a game like Keystone Capers, where you just push up and it's an elevator system. With this, you actually engage the keyboard. You hit a number on the keyboard and it takes you to that level.
Now, it's not like that on every system. I know that. I'm pretty sure, like the ColecoVision version of this, I think you just hit up and you go up one. I don't think the number pad does that. It's been a while since I played it, but I remember thinking this doesn't work the same way as the Atari one does.
Interesting. Speaking of the ColecoVision version, this game did come out on tons and tons and tons of systems. This thing came out on the Apple II, the 2600, the C64, the Super Cassette Vision, the Thompson MO, all of our favorites. And there's also a Tiger LCD version of this game, and it's the only Tiger LCD game I've ever seen that actually has a clamshell design like the Game & Watch. And from what I can gather, this thing is incredibly rare.
I knew of it, but I didn't know anyone that had one that I remember, as I recall.
Now, did you have a chance to check out this on any other systems besides this and the Coleco?
Actually, I've played this on a number of systems. It's funny, I'd forgotten, I was watching a video the other day and they'd mentioned that the Atari 2600, I'd totally forgotten this ever got a port to the 2600. And it's basic, the funny thing about this game, the game is basic graphically for every system. It's not a looker. But
I don't know, for 1982, it's very colorful.
Well, there's a lot. One thing, the graphics belie the complexity of it, because there's enough graphics to tell what's going on. But the Atari version is the 2600 version is very basic. I never played the Apple version. I own the Coleco version as well, and I'd played it quite a bit. And again, it's funny how these games sort of run hand in hand, but also they released Jumpman Jr. for the ColecoVision, and both have very similar results. But for me, personally, the version of this thing I always come back to is the Atari version, and there are reasons for that separate it from the other versions, and not just because I played it on here the most. I love the sound effects on this one. The noise that Bounty Bob makes when he runs around is not duplicated, unless you count the 5200 version, which I've always seen, I've never played. But the shuffle he does, it's a cool sound. The explosions on this sound great. The visual explosion on the screen is bizarre. This game is full of some kind of really unusual visual things that happen, all the way from the high score screen to it does a lot of weird stuff that's unique to it. Even the alarm that comes up when it's time to clear a level. The computer just did a primo job with that, and for everything else, they try to come close to that. Some can get pretty close, and some can't.
Yeah, I took a look at this on just a port comparison video on YouTube, and I can say that the Apple II version is very weak compared to the other computer versions.
It looked rough.
The best ones are actually the Japanese computers. The stuff like the FM7 and the Sharp PC with lots of numbers after it. One of those games looked great.
But they make Bob look. He's more cutesy. Didn't you agree with that?
Well, he's drawn differently, but it's not like he's like a chibi version of himself.
No, I don't mean that. But I've played this one for so long. I saw videos. I watched a comparison video on those, and they didn't look enough like I'm used to. Let's just put it that way. And so,
but one of the things that struck me is the amount of detail in the items in the rooms is a lot. They're full color items. The Game Boy version of this, it's funny, suffers from the same problem that Lode Runner and several other classic games did, where they zoom way in on Bounty Bob to give you more detail, but then they don't let you see the whole level at once. And I don't think I could play that game.
I watched some of the Game Boy footage. It looked like a whole different type of game to me. It's not like totally dissimilar from this in terms of the way. If you bought that to play this, I just don't think I think you're getting a whole different game. I didn't look good to me, at all. I didn't know there was a Game Boy. I was really actually surprised that there were so many different ports of it, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and this was a huge success for Big Five. This was the money maker. There is a website out there. If you just search Big Five software that Bill Hogue put together, and there's a scan of a check for $100,000 on there. He just scanned the check. He's like, "This is how much money we were making back in the day." So
at that price, it is a stunning that they sold so many, given the expense.
Well, Pete, I think at that point, people were, because you couldn't pirate it, people shelled out. It's weird how that happens.
It's weird because we did pirate it, so it must not. I don't know how long it went without being pirated.
It went for several years, actually.
Really?
It went for several years before it was pirated, before it was finally busted. And he followed this up with a sequel, of course,
yep.
Bounty Bob Strikes Back. It was very similar to this game. It had some great flourishes that this game doesn't have. I always think about the high score screen.
Yeah.
You operate a crane and you're picking letters off a thing. It's super cool, but it's mostly the same game. Unfortunately, they were never able to replicate the success of Bounty Bob Strikes Back. They tried different things, but as time wore on, it was becoming more and more difficult to be a one-man or two-man show.
Yeah.
One of the interesting things, and so much of this content comes from an interview that Kevin Savitz did with Bob on the Antic podcast.
Oh, yeah.
And one of the things that he talks about there is that he wanted, the original Bounty Bob Strikes Back was going to be Bob has escaped the mine and he's now a firefighter. And you've got to run all over this place and put out fires. And it was going to be in a Crystal Castle's isometric view.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Was it going to be like, not with the trackball and whatnot?
He doesn't really go into all the details, but he said basically they bit off more than they could chew with that viewpoint.
So that one never came.
That one never came out, and they just decided to do Bounty Bob more of the same.
So I'm not nearly as familiar with the sequel. I mean, I have played it. Mm-hmm. What did you think of it? I mean, obviously you like some of the first, but I mean, does it stack up well to you as a sequel? I
think so. I think that it's there's nothing wrong with more of the same if it's done well and if they've corrected some of the things. And I've played quite a bit of Bounty Bob, mostly because it was a super, super rare title. Those carts, if you can find them, go for hundreds and hundreds of dollars.
Really?
Now. And so I first played it just because I'd heard about how rare it was.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a good game. It's a good game.
It is quite remarkable that a game that sold so well that the sequel would be so a non-player, that they're so rare. Do they have a reason? Why do they think it didn't do that well? I mean,
I don't.
Because I mean, it is right up there. It's the same basic bear.
I don't know if it was because by the time it came out, these sort of single-screen platformers had kind of had their day.
Yeah. Do you remember what year it came out? I don't remember off the top of my head. It was several years later.
Yeah,
right?
I think it came out in '84 or '85.
I mean, the landscape was changing rapidly at that point.
Yeah.
I mean, you never know.
And so, but anyway, this was with Big Five, it was one of these things where as they got bigger with this game, they rented out bigger and bigger space, and finally, when they couldn't pay their bills, they just sort of shut everything down.
Oh man,
that was a
real bummer, man.
Yeah. And but Bill has done more stuff lately. He's put out a phone version of this game, and I guess he's updating that to make sure that it still works. He actually built some emulators, purpose-built emulators that only play Bounty Bob Strikes Back, that contain no Atari ROM code in them at all, so you can freely use them with a clear conscience. And it's funny because he said the bank switching technique that he used to protect Miner 2049er and Bounty Bob, he forgot how to break. And so he spent a couple weeks just trying to crack his own game.
I love it.
Yeah. So this thing reviewed very well. It won a 1984 Electronic Game of the Year. It was Creative Computing's 1984 Outstanding Software Award, and was also a Hot List Bestseller Award. So this thing was quite well received.
How did you receive this when you first played it?
At first, I'm going to be honest with you. At first, I got really aggravated with the timer. I thought, boy, I'm doing all this work. I'm doing my best just to get this thing cleared, and I'm running out of time at the last minute. But it really does make you play in a concentrated way. Yeah. You can't lollygag around in this game.
Yeah. The timer was necessary for sure. That really adds to the intensity. I was as I was doing a little research for this, I came across I don't know when this was released, but there was a Windows version. It was called Do you have anything on that? Because I looked at this and I was like, this looks awesome. Where's this been?
Yeah, I didn't do any research on it, but I did watch the video, and man, it looks great.
It was like Minor 2049 more or
again or something like that.
Yeah.
And the thing is, it's like there's a story mode where when you complete a level, you get a little cutscene, and the story also makes more sense because, like you said, it turns into like a cleanup operation where you're cleaning up the mine and stuff. And man, I'm gonna have to check this thing out. I'm hopeful that it's not like so many other Windows games where when Windows 10 came out, it broke compatibility, because I would love to play this thing.
Well, it did look good. I can't remember, was it 2003? It was a long time
2006, ago. I think.
And I'd never heard of this. I'll freely admit, this was right up there amongst my favorite games of all times on any machine. I love this one. And so, the sequel was okay. Don't get me wrong, but I mean, this is another one I thought you could do something like you mentioned to kind of modernize it and keep the same, because the actual puzzle stuff's fun.
Right.
You know. And this looks promising, so maybe to be continued. Maybe we'll mention it again somewhere down the line.
We did get some reviews on our Discord channel. If you are a patron of 1200XL, you can participate in the fun over at Discord and leave us a review for the games that we play. Rushi says, Donkey Kong meets City Connection in this innovative little platformer that holds up surprisingly well nearly 40 years later. Not the punishing, masochistic experience of the later Manic Miner that it would inspire, it more closely skews toward Chucky Egg in terms of difficulty while providing significantly more content than the home versions of Donkey Kong at the time. My favorite little bit of flavor is the way your character exponentially gains mass during his descents, resulting in falls that aren't just fatal, but also comically mutilating.
Yes.
A la Judge Doom at the end of Who Framed Roger Rabbit. I've only played the 1985 Super Cassette Vision version of this game in the past and was pleasantly surprised at how well the Atari 8-bit version compares graphically. I can see why it's so highly praised by the Atari community. Definitely worth a look-see if you've been wondering what's worth checking out on the system.
It's good that he mentioned Chucky Egg. Because I wanted to bring that up. And Manic Miner, again, I think they were both. I know Manic Miner was certainly inspired by this. And he's right. They took a system and turned it, well, especially Manic Miner. They made it far, far more lethal. You know, and it's a completely different type of game now. So you can sort of see how the basis of the game could be from Miner 2049er, but the actual execution of the game is a whole different ball of wax.
You know, we have a Super Cassette Vision. It was sent to us by Rushi himself.
If we could get it working, we'll be laughing.
So maybe one day we'll be able to check it out. Lord Soup says, I had Miner 2049er for the CPC. Great platforming fun.
Which I didn't look at that one, I'd say.
No. And finally, Chris Fold says, this is a game I've never played before. It reminds me of bits of Donkey Kong and Chucky Egg with a dash of Bagman for good measure. The graphics and sounds work well, even if the guy has a doofus look about him. The instant death if you fall a pixel too far is infuriating, but it has nice death scenes. A solid 7.5 out of 10.
We should mention it is funny because there's the explosion death when he hits the radioactive, and then there's when you fall too far, if you're jumping to the side, he glides in lovely, and it just literally smushes down to his hat. And if he falls too far straight down, he just goes straight down into the hat.
It's great.
Yeah, it's very clever. Fantastic. It makes it so you hate dying, but if you're gonna die, it might as well be hilarious.
Yeah. And finally, Aaron, I looked this thing up on eBay. It's going for about $40 complete. So,
man, I wish I had the box for mine.
Yeah.
But again, what are you gonna do? I'm happy I have it. I feel because this is a game that everyone I knew that could have it did have it because it was very popular.
It'll be interesting to find out some of the other original retail prices of these games when we can, because I was shocked when I heard about that $49.95. That's crazy. That is huge. And if you consider the stuff that when we look at stuff from the UK, for example, when you're getting games for like, $6 or $7 or £8, under $10 American, and then here comes this game that's a ludicrous amount of money. Absolutely, absolutely. All right, well, we do have a Patreon set up for this page. If you go to patreon.com/1200XL, if you like the show, you want to help support it, we'd love to have you. And it's all, it's all under the Amigos Retro Gaming family of podcasts. So if you like our style and you're curious about what we have to say about the Amiga, or the ZX Spectrum, or you and Brent do ARG Presents, which is a different system every week.
If you like weird, obscure stuff, there's your show right there.
Yeah. And of course, who could forget the Coco Show, all about the Tandy color computer. All of those shows, if you go to anchor.fm/Amigos Retro Gaming, you can subscribe to all of them in one feed, or just search on your favorite podcatcher. Speaking of podcatchers, we're trying to get 1200 XL out there on all the podcatchers. We've got almost all the big ones except for iTunes, and that is currently under review. So hopefully by next week we'll be on there too.
Very good.
I want to thank all the fine folks that are in the Twitch chat with us. We record Fridays at 5:30 Eastern. If you'd ever like to join us at twitch.tv/Amigos Retro Gaming, you can join the party with our super mod, Pixels at Dawn Gaming, 48K Rams here, Ricky DeRocher, 10-minute Amiga Retrocast, Polyester Links, Go sub, Edvin Helland, let's see, and
Neil is in here.
Yeah, Neil was here, Retro Man Cave, Wishbone. So thank you guys so much for hanging out with us. Picard 2010, I'm sure, is around too. And we also want to thank all of our Twitch subscribers. Still Adolescing, Bike Me, Chris Folds, Lasooner, Peeplo, Go Sub, Real Joe the Zombie, Paku Take, Rushi MSX, Frodo NL, Buck Owens, Anguish Auteur, Retro Jerry, Mitsuyama, Brother Bill, The Slow Norris, Uber Scuba Diver, and G Webkey.
Thanks, guys.
If you like the show and you want to support us on Twitch, if you are an Amazon Prime subscriber, you can jump on there and subscribe to our channel for free, and it helps benefit us. So thank you for listening. Episode 2. We plan on putting one of these out at least once a month, and as our schedule allows. And it's just, I'm so happy to be able to play a system that I actually grew up playing. It's a different sort of scene, because all the other shows...
It finally happened.
It finally happened. It finally happened. All right, guys. Well, thanks again for listening. We'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.